This episode of Mob Rules features several references to very unfortunate acts involving penguins. Before we start, we want to let you know that Danny and I neither condone, endorse, or encourage any of the penguin-based behaviors that Peter the Falcon Colissimo mentions in our interview with him in this episode of Mob Rules. We love penguins, but we don't love penguins. That's the important thing to remember.
We don't love penguins,
no,
right? Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Welcome to another episode of Mob Rules, continuing our interview storm. Today's guest, Peter Colissimo, better known as the Falcon, assistant to Val on 40kstats.com. We'll get to that interview later on. We spent about an hour and a half speaking to Peter. And just had a really good time, some really good information, and kind of really got to the bottom of a few different things that he was noodling over. But before we get to that boring stuff there, welcome to Mob Rules. I'm John, joined, of course, by...
I'm Danny.
And Danny, what have you been up to for the last 2 weeks? It's been 2 weeks already. It's always good when it feels like a short time between episodes.
This year has been an interesting year so far. I don't know. I've been super busy with work stuff. For those of you on a personal note, that don't know, I work for the immunization program, here for the state. So I've been doing a lot.
That's probably not busy, with COVID this time of year.
Yeah, it's no big deal or anything. It turns out I'm pretty busy, so I've been doing that a lot. I did have time to get in one game. I actually went over and played the first live game of 40K that I played since probably November, maybe October. I would say October. It's been October since I played a game of 40K in person. It was good. I went over to John Miller's house. John Miller, one of our resident
whipping boys
players, great player. Yeah, what's that?
It's like one of your perennial whipping boys. I'm just building this up to make it really disappointing for you, by the
way. Yeah, right. It's gonna make it worse. So sometimes you got to throw a guy a bone. So I took the new Death Guard. I wanted to try them out. So I went over to John's house, borrowed some Death Shroud.
I have 3 more on the way, by the way.
I chucked. Hell yeah. Where'd you find them? I've been having a heck of a time.
Do you know where I found them? Gamesworkshop.com.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so those will get delivered in June.
God, I hope not, because I have a Terminator Lord coming too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I got to play with those. I brought along. I'll just go over my list really quick. I played Lord of Contagion. Oh God, what is his name? The Sorcerer, Malignant Plaguecaster. That's the guy. Then I had 3 units of 20 Poxwalkers, 2 units of 5 Death Shroud with an extra Flamer, a squad of 5 Blight Lords with a Blight Launcher and a Flail. 1 each of all of the support characters. So
a literal Vitrid of plagues.
Yeah, I had 1 Viron, I think is what it is.
Viron. I don't know words.
Yeah. And then I had a Plague Surgeon with the Arch Contaminator Warlord trait and the Fugaris Helm. So he got +3 inches to his auras, which is great. Because that counts for both Arch Contaminator, so it makes Arch Contaminator 9. And it makes his Apothecary 6-up Feel No Pain 6 inches. And then I put a Foul Blight Spawn with the Revolting Stench Vats. Man, that guy is dope.
Oh, so he's still good, huh?
Oh, dude. Okay, so and I paid the 10 points to give him the reroll dice on his Flamer. That was such a great upgrade.
Especially because before that was like a strat, right?
What was before is you'd roll 2 dice and take the higher one. Now you just get to re-roll it if you want to. So, I think it might be better. It's probably about the same. And then it also gives him +1 strength, so it makes him strength 8 all the time on that flamer, which is a pretty good strength value, it turns out. And then a unit of 5 spawn with the grandfather's influence. Those guys were so good for point. Like, they were amazing.
Really?
Oh my god, dude, they were epic. Like, that was I think that was probably one of my best choices, because like Miller had to put in 4 Sanguinary Guard, 4 Blade Guard, and a Chapter Champion into them to kill them in melee. Like, all of them had to fight and attack and do everything in order to kill them. Like, there was no leeway.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they were great. And then what else? And 2 Blight Drones. So I went first. I made some mistakes. I got a little too greedy with the Blight Drones. Like, I put them I put them like 3 inches in front of my objectives, like kind of on my side of the board. There's this was Scorched Earth. So it's like Hammer and Anvil, but you don't get flanks. So you have to like push out into the flanks in order to deny space. You have like 8 inches on each side that you get pushed in on. And so anyway, I moved them up too far. And I deployed them bad. Like, I think what I want to do in the future is like, I'll move the Poxwalkers up within 3 inches of the objectives and deploy those guys in the corner instead of the Blight Drones. And then I'll kind of like leave a hole for the Blight Drone to sit in the middle of the Poxwalker, so he gets like surrounded.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't able to move onto the objective on the first turn with the Poxwalkers to use their to take D3 mortal wounds and like puke on the objective and corrupt it.
Oh yeah, because you took the Death Guard specific secondary where you had to corrupt objectives.
I did, yeah. That thing was great. I managed to score 12 points on that, so that was
really
definitely a good one for me. On the last turn, I just took 2 of my characters that were unwounded, walked them over to objectives, and puked on them. And
it's like a night out in Manchester.
It's yeah. So apparently, Death Guard are also just like soccer hooligans, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What do you win this game? Just throw up and shit.
Tough as nails. Yeah, just throw up on stuff. Let's see. So like that went pretty well for me. The things that didn't go well for me were making 4+ invulnerable saves and 6-up feel no pains.
Yeah.
I made really bad 4-up invulns, and I made literally for my Plague Surgeon saves, I made no 6-up feel no pains like the entire game.
50% of the time they never work.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which is okay. It's fine. Like, no big deal. So it was a close game. John was playing Blood Angels. I thought I had a pretty good advantage on him with my list, because my list has a lot of hitting power, and it's also very durable, and it takes away a lot of your charge bonuses. But John played it really good. He stayed away from my Foul Blightspawn. He did a really good job of that. Yeah, that was really tough. I did remind him once, though, he was going to charge him with some Death Company. And I was like, dude, you do not want to do that. That's going to end very poorly for you. Yeah, no, it was just, it was a game of like I got punished really hard for this. Oh, this actually cost me the game. So the game was a 3-point spread. It was 48-51, just because we scored so low on primary. Like, we were both taking the objectives back from each other, like, constantly. So he had, what were they? He had Sanguinary Guard and a big chaplain into a unit of 20 Poxwalkers. Now, I was able to attack with the Poxwalkers before his Sanguinary Guard were swung, and I killed 2 of them because the Poxwalker stratagem really does a good job of killing models with 2+ armor saves.
Yeah,
just if you roll
real good.
Yeah, it's really solid. So I managed to kill them, but I forgot that Poxwalkers like got to come back. when they kill, like you get to bring models back when you kill models in combat. And so I forgot to put 2 Poxwalkers back, and John literally killed me to a man on like with his very last attack. Like there was no extra. Had I remembered that would have been a 10-point swing for me in primary, because I would have held 3 objectives, which would have got me 10, and I would have held more than him. Just because he didn't have a lot of objectives secured in his list, or I was able to kill it pretty quickly. I
think that goes to show like the way armies are structured now in 9th. And we heard this like last January as well, when 9th was just kind of swirling around as rumors, that you really need to know your army inside out to kind of get the most of it and kind of to be the best. And like, I mean, it seems like a silly little rule. Like you get a 5-point model back when you kill another model. Like when it's a 10-point swing, that's a huge difference.
Huge. The other trick I did 2 tricks that I was pretty proud of in this game. Yeah, and literally that knowledge would have won me the game. So like, yeah, you absolutely have to be an expert in your army in 9th edition, or you're going to have a tough go. Yeah, so the 2 things I did, I was pretty happy with. So the Terminators have a stratagem that we talked about that like gives you -4 leadership if a Terminator kills a model.
Oh yeah, that's spicy as shit.
So I did that what was it? It was Sanguinary Guard with 1 model left. And they failed their leadership test and died. And that prevented my opponent from getting Oath of Moment, the victory point for that.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And it gave me the extra kill I needed for grind them down.
So, I mean, that's some like really cool swings. And like we were looking at that strategy, I'm like, yeah, maybe morale isn't quite as important anymore, but man, that just swung you so many points.
It was huge. And then the other one, I did the noxious or not noxious Blightbringer. The Biologist Putrefier. He gets to pick a unit within 6, and they get 6 mortal wounds on 6s. And so I just wanted to see what would happen. So I used it on my Death Shroud, and I charged a unit of Tactical Marines. And so you do the sweep attack. So they each get 8 attacks. The champion gets 10, so that's 42 attacks between 5 Death Shroud. And then they're in Arch Contaminator range, so they get to reroll failed to wound roll, or reroll to wound rolls, not just failed ones. And they were within range of my Lord of Corruption, so he has a 6-inch aura of reroll 1s to hit. So there were 42 attacks hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. And then any dice that wasn't a 6, I just rerolled for the wound roll. So I missed with 1 attack. I saw 41 hits. I got after all the rerolls, I got 17 6s. And since I'm wounding them on 3s, I got like 40 wounds or something like that at AP -1. So I mean, it like a way overkilled the squad, but holy shit, 17 mortal wounds on anything is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Like,
and I love that upgrade so much.
It's awesome. That's a great support character. So, but yeah, no, it was a fun game. Like I said, 48-51. So I lost by 3, just barely.
But those are the best games, right? Because you can point to like 2 or 3 moments in there where it could have gone the other way, and I'm sure like Miller can look at it and point to 2 or 3 things he could have done to like kind of do more. So games like that are like super, super cool. Yeah, for sure. And it was a great game in that respect. I'm pretty happy with so it was fun to play the Death Guard for a minute. I could definitely see the weaknesses in the list, and definitely some of the mistakes that I made that I could have improved on. So if I decide to play a list like that again in the future, spoiler, I won't. But I would definitely have some I would have some better tools to kind of understand what I need to do. The list needs some range firepower. So I think that while I didn't want to include Plague Marines at first, I think I do want some Plague Marines. So yeah, John, you showed me a list this week that had a lot of Plague Marine bodies with like special weapons, and I kind of was like, I don't know about this. But now that I've like played, I think you want at least one good sized squad of Plague Marines. It's all the objectives secure, right?
Objectives. Yeah.
So yeah, I shared with Danny sometimes where it was like, I think it was like 35 Plague Marines, like 5 squads of 7. And just like each squad had 2 plasma guns and a blight launcher in it, just for like firepower. Because like I'm looking at it, and there's certain builds I want you to do where like they want you in close and they want you to do combat. By the way the stratagems in the army's built, I don't think Plague Marines fill that role. I mean, and obviously I could be like very, very wrong. But when I look at the other options you have, so like the bloat drones with flash mowers, the Death Shroud, the Blight Lords, you have way better options for way better point efficiency than a Plague Marine squad, especially with the changes to Flail of Corruption, loss of death to the False Emperor. So for the cost of 2 Plague Marines, which is like 50 points almost, you can get 1 Death Shroud, which has a much better weapon, much better survivability, and about the same amount of attacks. Or even more if you choose to sweep.
They're insanely tough.
So like that's like I'm having the hardest time like specking up Plague Marines as a close combat weapon or our option. So I'm looking at them like for a firepower as an objective holder, just really as something, because especially with how limited the new army construction is, like you have to have either Plague Marines or Terminators. But then again, every time I build a list with Plague Marines, it feels really bad. It's like 40 models, and sure they're really tough, and it's like 100 odd wounds of stuff. I don't know yet. So I shared with Danny a couple of lists I'm going to go for. I'm going more for the heavily mechanized list to the start, and then I'm thinking I'm just going to cut back on things and add Plague Marines to flavor. Because I think the core's there. I just need to figure out what doesn't work, and the way I learn, I'm not going to learn it like looking at a piece of paper. I'm going to learn it by putting it on the table and figuring out what works and what doesn't. It's a wonderful sip. But yeah, what else have you been up to, Danny?
I think that's about it. I've just been kind of looking at my model collection. We did that Death Guard review last week, of course, so check that on YouTube if you have a chance.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Other than that,
it was our first review we got to do in months to get together. In fact, yeah, the first time we got to record together in months in person, which was super nice.
Yeah, finally. Like, yeah, that was nice. It's always good to see somebody like in person for real.
Yeah.
And raw dog the air with them.
we sure did.
But yeah, John, what have you been up to?
Oh man. So we did the Death Guard review. We looked at the book and kind of what came in. I had my initial reaction wasn't, I mean, the book is good. There's a lot of good stuff in here. You just have to jump through so many hoops to make your army. That I need to kind of I needed a few days to kind of get my head around like how to build an army. And I can't remember how many things I would armies I would make and send to you or others. And I'd be like, wait, no shit, that's illegal because I'm throwing Poxwalkers in there, but I only have 2 core and I need to do this, but I have cultists here, but you know what I mean? It's just like all of the things you have to go through to make it actually work. So kind of initially looking at the book, I actually went and ordered, and again from GW, so probably going to get it in March or so, a bloat drone kit because I only have Dark Imperium ones, and flash mowers are really where it's at. And also another Plague Surgeon, mainly because I think this was actually before the book. I knew I had a thought they were going to be good. And generally there's things that go out of stock for literally months right now when they're good. So I wanted to pick one up just in case I needed to run 2. So I ordered them. And then after we did the book review, I went back in and I ordered another unit or another 3 Death Shroud, and then a Chaos Space Marine Terminator Lord, who I think is my favorite unit in the new book, I have to say. Just because of the utility he has that Death Guard really don't have with anyone else. So the lists I be making, they've always included, and he's only 125 points for a Terminator Lord with a Combi Melta and a Chain Fist. And then on top of that, for 1 CP, you give him a Warlord trait, which makes him toughness 6. And he ignores AP 1 and 2. So right away, you have this super durable character you can drop literally anywhere on the table who can just take out vehicles. And the rest of my list I have there has Mortarion, obviously. So it's do you try and take down Mortarion who's running at your lines? Or maybe there's a tank killing character I dropped in your back lines who hits on 2s and is probably going to be wounding you on 2s because of the minus toughness aura. So I picked up another Chaos Lord because I really want to make a cool Nurgle guy kind of based off of that. Outside of that, Honestly, I didn't really do much hobby stuff. I ordered a bunch of stuff. I talked to Michael Tempe from the High Lords podcast, and I finished my 3D printer setup. So that's all in now.
Oh, man, yeah, that sounds so cool, dude.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm going to take videos of it working. It looks so weird and cool. So I picked up a cleaner/curer because, as you know, in Alaska, we have very little natural sunlight. So what it does, it's like a little machine that washes your prints and then it rotates it in front of a UV light so it cures. So I'm excited to kind of get playing with that. Maybe make some of those Dark Imperium blow drones into flash mowers. And then, Danny, you and I actually spent the last weekend, you more than me, actually, more than anyone else, commentating for Hammer Out Cancer, part of the Biff Pod charity drive.
Oh, yeah. I forgot for a second that we had done that. Like, this last weekend was such a blur. Like,
Danny, I think you did like 15 hours of commentary on stream.
I did 15 hours of commentary this week. That's a lot.
I only did 9. I was really negative about it.
Oh, gee, John, only more than a normal workday. I mean, you really slacked off there, I think.
I think what's funny is, so we were paired together to commentate the first stream on Sunday morning, which for us is 5 a.m. our time. So we're like, okay, cool, whatever. And then we were paired for the last stream together. We're like, okay, cool. And then the middle stream, I was paired with someone else. And then that person didn't show up. So I'm not the most knowledgeable person about 40K. And I'm looking at this game where I have no other commentator for me. There's no one at the table to tell me what's going on, like who has what secondary, you know, all that other kind of fun stuff. And it's who played in that game? That was it was Imperial Guard versus Sisters, I want to say.
Yeah, so Chuck versus Zach.
Yeah, so like Sister, and I was just like, yeah, I'm very lost. Trying to kind of let the players talk at the table and not talk over them because, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I get this message from Danny. He's like, hey, do you need help? I'm like, yes. I was like, get on here right now. But no, I had actually an amazing time. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, I was very nervous about doing like the whole thing. Because like over on like the mainstream, you had like Adam Camilleri, who has enough energy to power like 3 small towns in his commentating.
God, yeah.
You have Falcon, of course, who we're going to talk to later, who's just like a really good commentator as well. And all of these amazing people. And then there was me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Whoa. Now, first of all, you rate just as high as any of those people. Like, so don't put yourself down.
Oh, but it's what I do best. It's my Scottish heritage. But no, I got to say, like, game 1, I had a great time. And it was super nice, like, just seeing stuff and, like, kind of looking at games and being able to table talk without table talking, which I think is my new hobby now, which we were essentially doing. And I also learned a bunch of neat little tricks that I think I'm going to be able to use and pick up. And it kind of goes to the benefit of showing, or shows the benefit of, like, watching streams and watching people play games. Like, they're an Imperial Guard player, like, did a whole bunch of things. I'm like, oh, I got to watch for that. Or like, oh, I can do that because my thing does a similar thing to this. And yeah, definitely worthwhile. So if you have time, check out the streams. Biff Pod's Twitch channel should have the streams up and available to watch. And the Canhammer Twitch channel should have the streams up and available to watch. And if you want to see what me and Danny were doing, we were on the Canhammer one for a couple of games. And then the last game, we got bumped to the main channel. Heck yeah.
We were the main show, my friend. I was on Canhammer all day the first day too, so that was the only time I spent time on the actual Biff Pod stream.
But no, it was a lot of fun, and they raised a lot of money and did a lot of good for a couple of really Fred Hutchins cancer research, and also for Vincent Price, one of their local players, who has a really bad cancer diagnosis. So they set up this event to really kind of help out. So again, thank you to Colin and for putting it on, and for Biff Pod for having us. Definitely check out the streams. I'm sure there'll be more info later in the summer for Charity Hammer, which will be happening when COVID isn't, destroying the world. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. And like I said, I was really honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. And like the amount of money was crazy high.
What was the final donation? Do you remember?
I think it was right around $12,000, which I think is pretty close to the previous Charity Hammer, like the actual Charity Hammer raised. So that's amazing. I'm really proud to have been a part of that. Big thanks to Colin for organizing that. Yeah. That was good.
Yeah, and they had this crazy setup
to help out.
Yeah, it was great. And then if you guys have the chance, like I think My personal favorite stream was the first game on the Canhammer stream, where it was Imperial Guard versus Tyranids. Just because if you want a lesson on how to pull as many points as possible from a game, it was it Zach, right? No, Tyler, the Tyranid player. Tyler did an amazing job pulling back a game he should have got a lot less points on.
What a scrappy player.
But I will say, like, from a production standpoint, our last game we did, where we had Chuck as a little table boss, was just
Pickles.
Pickles. Oh my gosh, yeah. Pickles is a table boss. Man, what a lot of fun. And it was super nice. Like, we would talk from end of assault phase to end of movement phase, and then we just shut up and watch the game. And like, that was a really satisfying thing for me to do. And like, me and Danny would be talking, and all of a sudden Pickle would be like, hey, we're going to go to the table now. We're like, oh, okay, we'll shut up. And then we did, and it was a lot of fun. What was your favorite game from the weekend, Danny?
Let's see here. So I think watching the game, my favorite game was Tyler versus Zach, where Tyler was just really trying to make a game of it. I think that was my favorite one to watch. Competitively, excited about the Peter versus Zach game. I thought that was a really good game, actually. And the Chuck versus Zach game was really good too. Like, all three of those games that we did on Sunday were really, like, they weren't blowouts, which was great. The other two games that I watched that I did the first day, the first one wasn't as much of a blowout, but the second game was just this Blood Angels versus Slaanesh Demons, and it was just like, it exploded. Like, the Slaanesh Demons just cleared the Blood Angels off the table, with a couple of rad heroic moments that Harrison was able to pull off.
Nice. But yeah, definitely check out those streams.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, if we have nothing else, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Peter to talk about him a little bit.
Do you have
multiple
a single wound? A standard bolt gun? Having trouble maintaining an acceptable Xenos kill count? Only barely over 2 meters tall? Maybe it's time to ask your lieutenant if the Rubicon Primaris is right for you. The Rubicon Primaris is a prescription process that helps you to update that tired look. You may notice an increase in your purging abilities after within 2 to 4 hours. You may experience loss of life, additional organs, and a points increase. Do not take the Rubicon if you plan on fitting into rhinos, drop pods, or other traditional vehicles. The Rubicon Primaris is not intended for second founding chapters. The Rubicon Primaris is for use on genetically enhanced super soldiers over the age of 800 only. You are encouraged to report negative side effects to your company's apothecary. The Rubicon Primaris. Because sometimes plot armor is just not enough.
Right, and we are back. You know what? We're not just back, John. We're so back.
So back. I love being the second person now who gets to say that this time, like, disinterestedly from afar.
Awesome. So today we're joined by a very special guest. We have our guest could be better than you at 40K and can back it up with statistically. Peter the Falcon swooped onto the scene, providing data and statistical feedback on competitive 40K, and has helped shape the community by making the majority of his data available for free at 40kstats.com. A frequent podcaster, he joins Val on the tournament roundup show 40K Stat Center, corrects Pablo on chapter tactics, and stays up to the small hours with Rob of 40K Adjacent Falcon. Welcome.
Welcome. Wow, that is the best intro I have ever had. Like, I'm blown away. You know all the things that I do, especially the correcting Pablo thing. That is that is basically what I get paid for these days.
If there's one thing I'm good at, it's basic Googling and listening to 40K podcasts.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. You get paid?
Pablo once gave me a used box, and by box I mean like just a handful, like he just handed them to me, of aggressors. So yeah, I've been paid before.
Wait, you guys are getting aggressor money?
Yeah, I'm getting aggressor money. 3 golden painted aggressors. It was awesome. Oh, and I guess this is where I like go caca or something.
I was very.
I won't make you make some stupid animal sound,
dude. I was very specific on not putting like any bird-related questions in the thing today.
Wait. No, I have some bird-related questions.
All right.
I only have bird-related questions.
The rest of
this interview will be bird-related questions.
Oh, okay. I have sound effects queued up. Then that's good. Cool.
All right. So before we get started into like the meat of this interview, I've got some icebreaker questions for Pete here.
Good. I don't feel comfortable, so this is perfect.
Okay, cool. So these are just random questions that I came up that I Googled.
Okay.
These are going to be great, and I think it'll help to kind of like get people to know who you really are, not just a talking bird who knows numbers.
Question one: how dare you?
All right, so people call you the Falcon.
Yes.
But if you were to pick an animal, what kind of animal would you like to be?
What kind of animal would I like to be?
Yeah.
There's this penguin that exists that just like fucks everything. I'd be that.
Okay.
They said I could be anything, so I was a horny penguin.
Hey, you laid it out. By the way, before I continue,
you did.
Am I allowed to swear?
Oh yeah.
I probably should have asked in advance.
No,
I've never been on a hybrid podcast. I don't know how these work.
Very fucking mature.
Yeah. Thanks for not correcting Pablo on that, Dick.
So you want to be a horny penguin? That's your final answer? Like, you couldn't even not pick a bird. You still want to be a bird?
Yeah, just that one though.
All right.
I mean, a falcon is cool. It's got a cool name. It goes super fast, but it doesn't fuck everything. I mean, we'd have to ask Seth to be sure.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
He might be like, oh, actually, they're just like horned up anyway. In which case, I would revert to falcon. But yeah, this penguin, there's some weird stuff it does, but I think I'd be okay with the weird stuff too. You just get over it after a bit.
It's like a bird that can't even fly, so it's like a shitty bird even. Like so, but I appreciate your honesty. I like that.
Super fast swimmer though, and I am not a good swimmer. Like I am middling at best. Oh yeah.
I'm actually messaging.
Floating?
I was going to say I'm actually messaging Seth just now asking if falcons fuck.
Perfect.
Yeah, that just popped up on my notifications.
Because floating, if I'm dead, I'm super good at it.
Okay.
So there.
All right. All right. So let's ask a question a little bit more personal. I thought that question was a little impersonal, but
it got personal.
It became very personal.
That is how I am. You'll notice that all questions will become extraordinarily personal. So let's.
Great. If you could have an endless supply of any one food, what would it be?
Oh man, it would be moon mist ice cream.
I knew that.
I would go all in on moon mist ice cream, like all day, every day. Oh.
Could you expound a little bit on what moon mist ice cream is for our listeners in the United States who don't have that available to them?
Yeah. So moon mist ice cream, it's essentially only available in the maritime provinces in Canada. You can now like order it in specialty like dairy bars but in other places, but it started there. It's a like 3 flavor ice cream, kind of like Neapolitan. However, the flavors are usually grape, banana, and bubblegum. Sometimes instead of bubblegum, they use like a blue cherry. That's the shitty one. Don't go that route, guys. If you're like, man, I want some moon mist, and they're like, it's blue cherry, tell them to fuck off. But you get the bubblegum one, and oh man, like that is a treat. I would eat that all day, every day if I could. In fact, back home, by back home, I mean in the Maritimes where I lived for like 30 years, most of my friends refer to me as the Moon Mist Bandit because I would bring Moon Mist to like all sorts of special occasions where it just wasn't necessary, just to get people into it a little more because I felt it was like lacking in popularity.
And he was never invited to another funeral.
Yeah.
The funeral ones were way more rough than the weddings. The weddings, usually the father or of the bride would get real mad because I would scoop the moon mist into like the champagne glasses. I've done that more than once. But overall, generally worked.
Made baptisms real awkward when instead of holy water, it was just moon mist ice cream in
just
the bowl.
Moon mist ice cream.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and nothing pairs, like classically pairs together, like champagne and bubblegum flavored ice cream. So
No.
yeah.
I mean, if you haven't tried it, people, just get in on that.
Oh, well, conversely, what's the worst thing you've ever eaten?
Oh,
Hold on a second. That's a food. I don't want to hear any graphic stories or, yeah. No.
Okay, because like I've been in like weird food eating competitions, so I could say some shit. The thing that almost made me throw up was like cat food in a can. I don't know how they do it on Always Sunny. But for like an actual
a lot of glue, Peter.
That's true. That's true. That is true. That is not something. Maybe I should have done that prior to the competition. The worst thing, like I really usually will eat basically anything. I'm not a fan of like raw tomato. I think that's like I don't understand how people decided that was something we should eat.
What?
Tomatoes? Like, come on. It's a relative of nightshade. So right away, like you should, like people in the olden times should have looked at it and been like, maybe we shouldn't eat it. We'll probably die. But even after they took a taste, they should have been like, okay, this isn't good. Maybe they cooked it and were like, we'll just eat it raw because we're lazy. Because I mean, cooked tomato, there's benefits there. Yeah, this is a really tough question for me because, like I said, I'm usually not very picky. It would have to be some kind of raw tomato scenario. That would, like anything in that variety. I would be very mad if I had to eat that forever.
Okay. All right. Interesting. All right. So raw tomato, worst food.
Yeah.
Bubblegum ice cream, best food.
No, not bubblegum. Let's be real. It's 3 flavors. It's not just one. If it was just bubblegum, super boring. But you add in the grape, add in the banana, those extra hints. Just tasty, tasty, tasty.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you think that eating a bowl of Fruit Strike gum ice cream sounds like the best thing in the world.
It like you have to have it to understand. But
I love it. Yeah. I love it. All right. Let's see here. So, do you prefer books or films?
Books.
And why?
I like books. I like the smell of a book, like especially like a new or an old book. Middle ground books, shitty smell. New book smell, real good. Old book smell, real good. I just like the feel of it. I like to, create the images in my mind while I'm reading. Like films are super okay, but it doesn't necessarily spark as much imagination as a book does for me.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. All right. I got 2 more questions.
Okay.
Number 1. Which of Snow White's 7 dwarfs describes you the best? And if you need me to... Dopey?
Dopey.
Oh, man, right away. Okay.
Don't even have to finish asking the question.
It helps that I only remember 3. So, and I'm not grumpy and I'm not constipated.
That's not a dwarf.
It's good to know, though.
Yeah.
Then I got nothing. I only know 2, and Dopey would be it.
And you heard it here, guys. Eating raw tomatoes definitely makes you constipated. So
yeah, well, it helps against prostate cancer, so there are some benefits. But
the worst fruit available.
Yeah,
it's like a savory fruit. All right, last question. What is the strangest gift you've ever received?
I'm gonna have to go back. When I was in college, a girl gave to me a book about the Inuit because she thought I was like really into it. She was like, "Oh, man, I know that you love Eskimos, so I bought you this book." And I was like, "What is this?"
Well, you are a horny penguin.
I had no idea what it was about. I don't know who she talked to that was just convinced that I was just super into the Inuit people. But it was like a book called I Love Eskimos. And I was just like, I don't get it.
She thought you were super Inuit?
Yeah, you got it. Bam.
You're lucky I had that queued up. It was well deserved.
It was. So like, was it about like their culture or like stories from the?
I think it was like when I think about it, because I never really read the whole thing. I kind of flipped through it. It was like a 70s book, so it was like mildly racist.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And it just wasn't for me. And I didn't quite know where it came from. I knew it came from a place of love, but I didn't get it. I didn't quite understand like where that place was.
Oh. Man,
I got
Those
one.
are some great answers.
I got one. It's popped up here.
Okay.
What's something that people are obsessed with, but you just don't get the point of?
What don't I get the point of anymore? That's a good question. I think I've become so insulated in the people I talk to that I'm just obsessed with all the same things they are now. If you want to make it 40K related, there's like this obsession with like creating player rankings using like ELO or Glico or something like that. And people are just like dead set that it needs to be done. And I don't care. And that's probably like a big one for me. I just don't care. There's a few things that like I understand. I guess I understand kind of why people want it when it comes to statistics, but there's a few things I get asked for like repeatedly, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. No one cares about this. Let's move forward. And that's just one that kind of pops to my mind.
But I went 1 and 2 at an RTT. I got to figure out where I place, like statistically. But speaking of 40K,
me, senpai.
Okay, that's an episode title right there. Thank you, Danny. But speaking of 40K, how did you actually get started in Warhammer?
So, excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit here. When I was a young boy, in a small town called Sunny Corner, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. And he said, son, no. Guys, that was My Humps by Black Eyed Peas. That's what I was going for there, in case you were wondering what the reference was. I got into 40K actually about almost 15 years ago now. It was a couple years before my son was born. My wife and I had just gotten married, and she was like, hey, if we want to have kids, you might want to change up your hobbies, get into something that is a little less time intensive as some of the things you currently do. And I went out and played some board games one night with some friends. And one of them, who I'd never met before, this fellow named Craig, he ran the local shop in Moncton, New Brunswick. He, like, after a couple games we played like Hero Clicks and Hero Quest and that kind of game. He said, like, man, I think you'd be really into Warhammer. You're really into these kind of games. Do you want to give it a try? And I was like, sure, whatever, I guess. So a couple weeks later, I went to his place. We played a game of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It was probably like 5th or 6th edition. He gave me an army of orcs to play. And turn 1, he killed my general with a cannon shot, and then explained to me why I made my list poorly. And then I was like, well, you made the list for me.
But I won.
And then he was like, oh, yeah, that's right. But I still had such a fun time that I started, showing up at the GameStop every week. And then I started collecting models. And it kind of really expanded from there, like week to week, month to month. I started running tournaments for the local crew. And they got really big real fast. Like the first tournament I ran, we had like 15 people sign up. And then 30 people showed up the day of the event to play. So I had to go to Costco and buy extra tables because the game store, we had the room, but we didn't have the tables to play. So I bought like 8 tables at Costco, brought them in, played the tournament. We did 4 rounds, and then I drove the tables back to Costco that night and returned them to say that they weren't for us.
God bless Costco's return policy.
Exactly. And that was kind of it. Like, I just was hooked. I was hooked with the community. The people were so good to me and to each other. Like, we were all nerds, but we came from all these different like walks of life, and we came together over this. And so 15 years ago till now, it's been like one of the biggest joys of my life to be part of a community like this, and the general people that I get to meet and play with and hang out with.
And is your wife still happy that you chose something
No,
that took
no.
way less of your time than your previous hobby, which I'm assuming was like an 80-hour-a-week job?
I mean, to be fair, yes, I was working a lot of hours back then, so that was probably part of it. But initially, when I first started the hobby, she was like super cool with it. Then we actually did have kids, and there kind of came a point where she was like, "You do this too much." So it kind of became a once a week thing for me for a while. And then once we moved to the absolute middle of nowhere 4 years ago, where there was absolutely nothing else to do, she's kind of fully embraced just letting me do the Warhammer thing however I want, with whatever time I have available. So
amazing. So what was your first army?
my first army for Warhammer Fantasy was Lizardmen. My wife actually bought me like the starter set one Christmas, and then like 2 weeks later, there was a guy at the store that came in, was like, "I don't like my Lizardmen. I think they're garbage." And he sold like 3,000 or 4,000 points to me for like $500, which was a pretty good deal. Mostly painted. So that was kind of my Lizardman thing. And then when I got into 40K a few years later, my first army was Space Wolves. It was going to be Tau. I had asked the Craig, the guy that managed the store, like what the armies were like for 40K, because there was a big community about an hour away, and they used to always come to our fantasy events. And I wanted to start going to their 40K events just to show support. And so he kind of explained some of the armies that he knew. He wasn't into 40K at the time, and he never mentioned Space Wolves. So I was going to buy Tau. And that was like Tau had like a 3rd edition book, and that was it at the time. So a lot of the rules were super old, but I just was like a super weeb. So I just wanted it real bad. And the day I went in to buy like a bunch of Tau models, I noticed the Space Wolf Codex on the shelf. So I started flipping through it, and I like went up to the desk, and I was like, why the hell didn't you tell me that there were Viking werewolves in this game? Because holy shit, you don't know me if you didn't think I would buy these immediately. And so I started a Space Wolves army right there and then. I played them for a couple of years and then switched to Tau because Tau became super broken, and I really liked Riptides. And then it just turned out Riptides were ridiculous for like 8 years.
Oh man, remember that first GT we had up here, Danny? Where it was it like 7th edition, I think still, or was it 6th edition, where it was like 25, 30 players, and there was like 26 Riptide wings?
It was so many Riptide wings, dude. I think I played against 3 of them during that event, at least 3 at least out of a 5-game event.
There was a Tyranid player with a Riptide wing. No wonder they have such a great reputation nowadays. Yeah, they're gone.
Game 1 I remember was versus the Knight formation, the one with 3 knights, where they all got the improved ion shields, and then side wing.
Yeah, I played the Firebase support cadre when it first came out, and it was the only formation in the game, and no one understood like how they worked, and I loved it. I was like, so I just have to take models I was taking already, and I get free rules? Okay, I guess. Cool. Like, yeah, this game must be balanced at some level.
Just not this one.
Just not this one.
It's an idea. It's an attainable level. It's just an idea. What's your best ever game of 40K?
It was actually, I've had a lot of really good games, but the one that always sticks in my memory was actually my second ever tournament game I ever had of 40K. When I was playing the Space Wolves, there was this dude named Josh. He showed up at the local game store. He was playing Drukhari. I was playing these Space Wolves. I had my Lone Wolf, who I called Lone Wolf Joe, that I had modeled with his shield up like he was a Spartan, and he had a chain fist. And we played that game, and it was like so close. It was just balls deep because Drukhari glass cannons, and my list was not good, but it was Space Wolves, which were really good at the time. So I was just like getting by off of having a better codex. And the game ended with me with just one model left. And it was that Lone Wolf. And back then, Lone Wolves gave a victory point to your opponent if they survived till the end of the game. So we officially ended with a draw, even though I technically like won because I gave him that free victory point. But the game was so much fun. We had such a fun time bantering back and forth. We became really really close friends after that. We didn't see each other all the time because he lived in another city, but like every time we got together, we had a blast. I had multiple tournament games against him, but that one always sticks in my mind for just like this absolute murder massacre. And even though I tabled him, I still ended up in a draw.
That's awesome.
I remember those lone wolf rules because
oh man, yeah, me too. They were like the Slayer rules from Fantasy. I remember that.
The greatest thing was just running away from a lone wolf who kept on trying to charge my killer close combat unit. And it's like, no, stay away. So you're best known for your kind of ability to kind of present and kind of gather and collate statistics in 40K and kind of really explain the game on like a granular level, almost like, you know, that Rick and Morty, where Morty's like, hey, you know, you're a piece of shit and I can prove it scientifically. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to, because it's going to bother me if I don't. Everyone talks about, like, you know, the main statistics, the wins, losses, you know, faction ratings, all that other kind of things. What's an underrated stat that no one really talks about, but is kind of really telling for the state of the game?
Like a lot of people, when they talk to me, if they know my work, they talk about TWIP, the tournaments and winning position, which is like a way to verify how a faction is performing just based off of how many times it gets to round 5 of a tournament, essentially without suffering a loss. But a stat that I like just as much, if not more, is just average first round loss. If you spend a lot of time looking at the numbers, that particular stat actually shows you a lot about like the state or the condition of a particular faction. In general, the average first round loss for an army, if all events are 5 rounds, is 1.95. So a faction that is kind of dead even in terms of playability across all levels of the game and all like capabilities is going to be around that number. Because we do have a lot of events that do go to 6, it generally ends up being about 2.0 instead. So you can look at that number and really gauge how a faction is performing solely based off that. Because if it's like around 2, between like 1.9 and 2.1, it's generally a faction that is pretty solid. It's middling, but that's fine. Once you break that 2.1 side, those are almost always, you look at them and those are the factions that people talk about, like as, oh, I wonder if there's a problem with it. It might be too strong, etc. And once you get below 1.9, it's the same, like at the opposite side, they're usually very weak, or they only have one particular build. But just looking at that one number, you can often gauge a lot. That being said, when it comes to stats, like the biggest problem is people focus on one number, and like all of the stats tell a story, and you really need to look at all of them in order to get like the full picture of the game.
So what are some common themes you're seeing across kind of like top armies
currently?
Yeah.
The top armies are essentially all either the most mobile or the hardest to kill, or both. They all have access to some kind of durable obsec. And they generally play the missions very well, which if you're mobile and are hard to kill, you'll succeed. Armies, like the top army right now, pretty much across all statistics for 9th edition has been Harlequins. And that's not, usually I only look at GTs in the past. That's all I would do. But because of coronavirus, where we haven't had very many, and the ones that we have had have generally been localized, I've kind of branched out with the help of Goonhammer, with the help of, Best Coast pairings and Down Under pairings, Josh Diffie, to just gather more and more data to try and see like how it all pans out. And like Harlequins at all levels of the game are extremely good performers, well over a 60% win rate, which in the past I would have been worried about in different states of the balance for the game. But given where we are, it's actually not that terrible. Demons are another example, either Nurgle mixed with Tzeentch for that Lord of Change, or Slaanesh because of just the outright speed of the army. White Scars are performing very well. Sisters of Battle because they just have so many tools and toys available to them, and they change the probability of the game. Those are kind of like the top armies right now, and they all generally fit a theme. The one army that gets talked about occasionally as being a top army and doesn't seem to be always there is Custodies. Custodies are very interesting to me. If you look at them in a casual play scenario or RTTs, their stats are incredible. They're generally just below Harlequins in terms of basically everything. But when it comes to GTs and majors, they've won a couple, and it's usually been with very skewed lists in very small metas. But when it comes to larger events, majors, or even just larger GTs, they tend to hit a loss somewhere. So they're an army that I'm just waiting for someone to figure out. Similar to AdMech, they have like a similar problem with very good numbers, but they just have a hard time winning events because they have a couple really bad matchups.
Man,
Sure.
You're that, Danny. In our small meta, we got to prepare for Custodies.
yeah, that's true. Well, what about Necrons, Peter? I thought they were an army with.
They are.
Right. Oh,
they are now. They are now. I kind of forget to talk about them because they kind of really spiked only in the last 2 months after their codex dropped.
Sure.
But they went from being a like absolute terrible army to
right.
Mid 50s win rate, which is very good. There's only a couple armies that have been performing better. Their T-Whip is actually generally good for the 8 or 9, 10 GTs we've had. It's not really enough to confirm if it's the real deal or not, but it feels that way. But the other thing, when you look at the lists that are working for Necrons, it's definitely different from what had been working for Space Marines and all these other armies, right? Like their model count is generally much higher for the most successful lists. We're looking at like 40, 60 warriors. People that are trying to beat them, you have to figure out how to kill 20, usually in one turn, to be able to deal with that, to deal with that army. So it's very interesting, and I'm waiting to see when it what's the word? How am I trying to word this? My mouth decided to stop working for me. When it regresses to mean, like when we see that regression to this is how it's going to be stable, because if you look at the day-to-day stats. Unfortunately, something that's harder to do with 40kstats.com, and I'm going to work to change that. It's still like going up and up and up, and it hasn't plateaued yet. So that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to see where that plateau hits, and then we'll know like this is where they're actually supposed to be.
Nice.
Interesting. Well, that's really cool. Dude. And Bronx is definitely excited about Necrons.
Bronx is excited about Necrons and about the dog next door. He is just adamant that the dog next door is right about there being villains outside. In an unrelated story, Bronx decided to take me for a ride sitcom style down the road today because we just had an ice storm yesterday. And I decided in my best genius method to take him for a jog in my Adidas sneakers. And I slipped on a patch of ice, and he decided that was the perfect time to go full bore as if I was sprinting. And he dragged me maybe 10 feet on my stomach. Before he realized that I wasn't keeping up any longer. And I 100% now believe that I'm living in a sitcom or some kind of Kevin James movie, and I'm just waiting for the laugh track to kick in.
It's the Falcon show. That's what it is.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure.
Paul Blart, statistician. So you mentioned 40kstats.com. Most people probably got their introduction to you from 40K Stats Center. The podcast you and Val started there. What made you guys start that podcast?
So I started doing podcasts with Chapter Tactics about 2 years ago, in like mid 2018. And they made me a host probably, I think it was like September or October that year. And Val and I were co-hosts, and we got along very well. Val was really into the statistics thing. The whole reason why I started statistics in tracking the statistics was because of an episode of Chapter Tactics I heard with Val on it. The previous January, Best Coast Pairings had sent like an Excel file to Val with all of the pairings from the previous year for 40K, and he'd kind of dug in, and the data wasn't very good, but he managed to create some graphs out of it, and they talked about it on this episode. Me hearing that, I was like, holy shit, like these stats are garbage, and this whole game is based on stats. Why isn't someone doing better? I have like 8 hours a day where I'm doing nothing. Maybe I should try. And so that kind of where I got started. I started talking to Val like every day. We were discussing stats, and I was like showing him formulas we could use to really kind of dig into how factions worked. And he was bouncing back ideas of things he's always wanted to be able to see. And we did that for a few months. And while this was going on, I was going on Chapter Tactics and discussing tournament events. And the problem that we had, and Pablo had acknowledged it himself, was we didn't have enough time. We were doing like a 2-hour podcast, and we were only able to devote, say, half an hour to tournament results, but there were so many tournaments that it wasn't getting its due. If I wasn't on the show when they were trying to do it, like they were struggling to keep up with lists, etc., and really give everybody, like talk through how the lists actually functioned, Val and I started discussing it. We were like, why don't we just do like a Sports Center style podcast where we bring the people on that actually played these lists, interview them, and get like the words out of their mouths? Because really nobody was doing that at the time. Most podcasts, I would say like 99% of them, was just 2 to 4 guys that were bringing up tournament results, if they even talked about tournaments, and just kind of like talking out of their ass. Like, you know, oh, if I played this list, this is probably what the guy's trying to do. And even if they were really amazing players, they were often missing like key points, or they would just miss parts of the list entirely. So we wanted to do that justice. But more importantly, we wanted to get the community and the broader community, not just the competitive community, but maybe people that are outside of the competitive community, to listen to these voices, understand and know their names, and realize, you know, like they're people too, but they have just like a slightly different view on the game than we do, and we should take advantage. And so we created Stat Center, and we started doing it. I was writing scripts for like 8 hours the day before we would record a Stat Center episode, because we wanted everything to be perfect. And it was a real blast up until COVID. We were having a great time. And then, you know, events started to slow down, and it got a little weird because we were really struggling to keep recording events when we weren't quite sure all the time just how seriously they were taking what was going on around them.
So, yeah, I was going to say, like, right at the start of COVID, you guys pretty early on made the decision to kind of go on hiatus. What kind of really prompted that decision, and kind of what were you guys talking about through it?
Well, we had a few instances kind of just before everybody stopped for a while. Like there was a period from like end of March until June, I want to say, where like nobody ran an event. You might have seen an RTT, but there were no GTs. There was nothing like that going on. But just prior to that, we had a couple instances where we'd gotten popular enough that we would get emails pretty regularly, like, hey, we're running an event. I hope you guys cover it. And a few of them started getting a little too dangerous, I want to say. Like they would be like, hey, our venue canceled, but we're still going ahead. We found another venue. And we were looking at the numbers in these states and provinces and countries, and we're like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't feel right to cover this stuff. So Val and I talked at length about it, and we talked with Reese about it. And we made the decision that, like, even if events kept going, we were going to stop for a while and just wait till things settled down. And we did. We stopped for about 3 months. And then things kind of cooled off. Most places ended their kind of first wave. Countries were opening up again. We started back up for a few weeks, but we were really struggling because there were a lot of events that were saying they were COVID safe. And I'm not going to name names or point out people because it's the game. But like there was definitely like events where we were like, okay, we're going to cover this event. And then we would look at pictures from the event and we're like, I don't know if they're really treating this seriously, and it doesn't look good for the game itself and for so many other reasons. So we just made the decision, like, rather than make this political, rather than make this anything other than what it is, we were just going to not do the show. And it happened to also coincide with Val having a baby, so it gave him a little more time to focus on fatherhood. And that was really it. It was just this kind of, we wanted to make sure not a single soul was going to go to an event because they wanted to be featured on our show. Because I hate to sound like, it sounds like I'm making us bigger than we were, but we know that there were people going to events because they wanted to be on Stat Center, and we just didn't want that to be on anybody's mind.
And one of these days I will win an event to make that happen.
If you stopped running Skull Altars and Mauler Fiends, man, I think you'd have a legitimate shot, especially after Danny moves, and if Taylor moves, and if Rob moves. Like, there's probably 6 or 7 people that also need to move out of Alaska, but I think you can do it.
Or here, I could also move to a different place where there's only me. And yeah, it'll be a one-person GT. I'll have my kids play. The Isle
of Man has very small community. You could probably get there.
It'd still come third in a 2-person GT.
Your kids play, right?
They would if I was making numbers. Something you said earlier was that you guys scripted all of Stat Center. So kind of take me through the process of prepping for like an episode of Stat Center.
So for probably, I want to say the first 3 months, we scripted Stat Center before Val convinced me that it was okay for me to think on my feet. And the process was usually Friday night, Saturday morning, I would dig into all the different myriad websites and programs that tracked tournaments to see how many events looked like they were going to be GTs. I would track them all over the weekend to see who was winning, who was losing. And then as the results came in, we would start texting people to see if they were interested in being on the show. We would message tournament organizers. Some of them would message us once we got, a little more popular. We'd message usually the first place player and whoever they played against. If the event was big enough and they had more than one undefeated player, we would usually pick at least 2 of them to interview. We would wait for their interview notes to come in, and then I would listen to them. And I would write a script around what they were going to say so that we could intro them well, tell a bunch of jokes, some of them a little insider info jokes just for a part of the community that we knew was like a big part of our listenership. And we would go from there. We would have like an intro for every tournament. And so the day before and sometimes the day of our recording, I would usually go down into my office around 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and I'd just start typing. I would listen to whatever kind of file we got sent, and I would just type out a script to go along with it.
So what's something about you that people assume but are really wrong? It's like a common assumption people have about you, which is just so far off the mark, because being kind of, you're a member of the Frontline Gaming Network. You're a fairly well-known personality, I think is the politest way to put it. Like, what's something people assume about you that is just so far off the mark, you're like, stop?
It's a good question.
You would assume he's a good person, but that's not real.
That's a big one. I am a dickhead. There's a lot of people until they get to know me that think I'm a lot more serious than I am. I think that's kind of the big one. Like, I can get pretty pedantic, but I think a lot of people don't get that I there's a strong apathy within me that turns into jokes. And I'd rather be the fool all the time. I would rather be the fool than the straight edge. But I often end up playing like the straight person in the podcasts I'm on. Because I'm the guy that has the information, but I would much prefer to be the fool. If I had it my way, I would just be an idiot, like all the time. Just be a fucking idiot and say stupid things and have Pablo correct me. I would love it.
So I really want to have like the April Fool's episode of Chapter Tactics of just having Pablo correct you for like an hour. Just like script the whole thing and just have him constantly correct you.
And I mean, we joke about that. Pablo's such a good guy and he knows so much. It's just when it comes, it's often like when I have to correct him, it's always like that last minute episode we do where he's like, Peter, can you come up with something for me? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll do something. And when I bring up the topic, he's like, cool. And he just can't lead it because he had no time. And I understand it, but man, it's fun and he gets it. We love it.
Yeah. And he actually came up here a couple of years back and was like super awesome guy. So totally. He is one of my top 5 people in 40K for sure. He's just such a good soul. So what's something that you've sort of accomplished with Stat Center that you never thought would happen?
Getting people to listen to us at all. I think that was huge. I loved the premise and I figured Val's on the show. People like Val, people will listen, I guess, from that. So that was a big one to actually have people listen to us. I think the biggest thing that we accomplished was bringing the world together for 40K. It was another kind of one of our secondary missions was to show people in North America that the game was played other places and that there were good players other places. And like, we aren't the only people playing this game. It's not just us. It's not just like the UK. There's people in Poland that fucking destroy this game.
Yep.
There's people in Australia that wreck. And to me, that was like the big thing was when I started it on Chapter Tactics by trying to focus on these events in like Sweden and Australia. And then when we got to like further that on Stats Center, that was a big thing for me. One of my favorite emails I ever received was one morning I woke up and I got a message from Germany, and I'd like never expected that. It was like 6 a.m. I was getting ready for work. I checked my phone and there's this like email from this dude in Germany. He's like, I just want to say we love your show. Thank you so much for talking about us, because no one ever has. And I was like blown away by it. And they're like, hey, can we talk about this stuff on our podcast? And I was just like, I cannot understand. Target Priority Podcast, by the way, an amazing show. I couldn't understand like how we had managed to connect people in all these other countries that we like never really got to before. So that was a big thing for me, and it still is. I try all the time to get like people to focus on these other countries because they do things. They're playing the same game we are, and some of these players are absolutely fantastic.
So who are some of these?
We're
players?
talking about places that like whip our ass at ETC or WTC like all the time.
Oh yeah.
So like, it's obvious that these people exist. We should be talking about them. They are extremely good at this game.
Yeah. I know recently, like in the Biff Pod Discord, there was a conversation about like who's the best player, 40K player that you know, and someone had like names were brought up, and they were almost all North American names. And Boss Baby Ennis Wilson kind of was like, well, like, can any of you name a player other than Peter that isn't from the UK or the United States? And that's like, but that's the thing, right? Is we don't think about, there's these guys in Poland that come in second or third basically every time there's a WTC, and they think in such a different way than we do. Sometimes we just don't, we don't see it. If we go back years, not that long ago, a couple of years ago, there was always that joke, like the UK is 6 months ahead of the meta. But I remember when I started covering Australian stuff, I would bring up these players and other people would be like, they're not good. It's just because it's Australia that they're winning. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure these guys would shit all over like 98% of us, if not more. Like Eric Lathoris, I used to bring him up all the time because the first time I watched him on a stream, I was like, this is the best player I've ever seen play a game of 40K, because everything he did was like perfect. And I'd never really seen that. You'd seen like Brandon Grant go full robot mode occasionally. But like with Eric, it was like, this is just his second nature. This is just how he does things. So there are players like that.
That guy's hands are so fast. Like watching him play that game with all the Tyranids was insane. Like how do you move and play that many models? Anyway.
And perfectly placed. Like it's
right.
He's played it so much, right? And so that has been a big thing for me, was trying to spread that message. Like, this game is so big, it's so worldwide. We should be looking at it from a worldwide perspective.
So do you think, because I mean that joke has persisted for the longest time, that the UK and like Europe's like 6 months ahead of the meta. Do you think they just have a higher caliber of players compared to us overall in the United States, that they're just getting stuff quicker, or where does that come from?
I mean, like, they played a different game than us for several years, right? They didn't care about the ITC, so they played ETC. They played book missions during 8th edition. Like
monsters.
The best that they did for 8th edition was they comboed Maelstrom and Eternal War missions, right? That they very rarely played ITC. So oftentimes they were playing a different game. But by playing a different game, they saw combos that we didn't think would work because of the ITC, right? A lot of times when you look at like our best players, they're so analytical. They'll be like, well, that's going to, if I played 6 Hive Tyrants, my opponent's going to max X secondaries against me.
Right.
Without actually playing the list, right? And then Matt Root takes it to Adepticon or whatever and demolishes everybody because he finally sees the big picture and is like, oh, well, I can just null deploy my entire army and all they can kill is Ripper Swarms for a turn. Oh, now I see that they're just not going to score secondaries because they'll be dead. And like, it's stuff like that kind of just didn't carry over back early on. As the last couple of years have progressed, though, I think North America has definitely spiked in its talent by a large margin. Like, we're not just talking about Nick Nonabati anymore. We're not talking just about Team Happy anymore with like an asterisk beside their accomplishments.
Right, sure.
Like we've got Team like the dudes at Brohammer that are working together. Like, there are so many podcasts with just ridiculously amazing people that can analyze this game at a different level now, that it's changed everything. I would say that North America, UK, Sweden, Australia, they're all on the same page. There might be small parts of these countries where it may be like a step behind, but I don't think that there's any major difference in skill level any longer.
So you said like one of your proudest achievements is shining that spotlight on things outside the North American market. Who are some of the players that you've been able to really expose people to and have people learn from?
One of my favorites that we had on Stat Center was Menelik Eriksson. He's a player out of Sweden. He's like 14 years old, and he won a major over there, and I think he's second placed at another one. He was running another guy's list, Carl Abramson, who is like a fantastic player. Arguably the best player in Sweden. I loved getting him on the show because it's like, here's this kid that's just like stomping face. And I'm sure he's using somebody else's list, but that doesn't mean anything. That list was hard to play. So it was one of those things where getting like that name out there, Rickard Nilsson, the like AdMech player, being able to talk about him pretty frequently was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple German players that we interviewed, Matthias Weinhardt, I want to say his name is, from the Prague Open, who ran this like crazy Astra Militarum list that won a couple years back.
Oh, is that with all the chimeras? Was that the mechanized one? Yeah, that was a cool list.
Like getting those names out there was really exciting for me. And then when we did our WTC episode, that was huge because
that was a rad episode.
We really like, there was very little coverage in previous years of WTC on the North America side. Like the year that the US won, there was like no coverage. So it was just like, hey, we won. Everyone's super excited. No one quite understands why. So it was really big for us to be able to have this, to do this whole like episode. And that was the longest prep we did for any episode ever, because we were interviewing all these teams and talking to players from like around the world and getting like real insight into how the game is played at that level. I think that was our crowning achievement.
Nice. So yeah, and then if you guys want to hear, if you haven't listened to the interview we did with Innes Wilson, Innes is the captain of Team Scotland for WTC, which is a completely different way to play, but it is amazing and kind of like adds whole new layers onto the game of 40K. Since you guys went on hiatus in Stat Center, you guys have been popping up everywhere again. Most kind of frequently with Rob over on the 40K adjacent show. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Rob Symes, from the Honest Wargamer, he's been a friend of Val and I's for a couple of years now. He's very into statistics. He does them for the Age of Sigmar community, him and another fellow on their show. And so when he heard that we were doing 40K, when I was doing 40K stats and that Val was helping out, he reached out. We became like close friends right away. He invited me to help host the Capital City Bloodbath in 2019 with him, which was an absolute ball. I finally got to meet him in person. He's such a good person, very salty person when it comes to certain subjects, but like overall, just a great guy. So when COVID started and the UK went into their first lockdown, he decided he was going to do a stream streak where he was going to stream every day until COVID was done. And after doing it for, I want to say like a week, he invited Val and I on for like a one-shot show for just like an interview about Stat Center and what we were doing because of COVID. And we went on like a long rant about the Bush administration and placenta on that episode and just like random nonsense. And we talked for maybe 5 minutes about 40K. And when the episode was over, like we were like, we would just like to do this all the time if we could. And so the 40K Adjacent Show was born every Tuesday in the afternoon in the UK. It's 5 a.m. Mountain Standard Time by North American standards, because that's when I hop on. I wake up around 4 a.m. We get set up and we just shoot the shit for an hour and a half, usually sometimes about 40K, but most often just about like whatever we want. And then like a 20-minute insert on our views of the current 40K world. And it's great. It's a ball. I love it to death because I mentioned earlier, I love to play the fool, and it just lets me do that. I only have to think for 20 minutes on that show, and the rest of the time I can just talk nonsense and have a good time.
What's the best aside that you've ever had in that 40K Jason show? Like, so the best
Oh,
conversation that went off kilter.
Frick. I think it was like the second time we went into Placenta, where we got like super into like whether you should watch it during the pregnancy, because Val was about to have his baby. And we were like, should you eat it? And we went on this long, it went like way too long, and Rob was getting sick over it, and Val was curiously intrigued. And that was one of my favorites. We also did an episode that ended up spawning a bit of a meme, the podcast fuckboy meme, where we went on a bit of a rant about like, you know, hopping onto different podcasts and what that was like. And we called Val the podcast fuckboy. It turned out Val didn't know what a fuckboy meant. He thought it was something very different. And so that in itself kind of grew. There's a t-shirt now available. So those are probably my two favorites, but like every time it's about the last episode we did this week, I was particularly tired and it came out, and I think it was one of our best episodes for just foolishness. And I was very mad about the new Luminarch models that they showed, because their hats are ridiculous. So I went on a rant about stupid hats. There was another rant about townies,
like,
people that live in cities.
You don't like their hats? I thought their hats were reasonable, finally.
Yeah, it's the hats on the kangaroo riders that are the ridiculous part.
Yes. The kangaroo rider hats are absurd. I was also angry that they weren't called kangaroos, because that's bullshit. Just call them what they are, people. I did say that the character's hat seemed moderately okay, but like Luminarch hats are fucking bullshit. What is up, guys? Stop it. Just stop it. GW, no one likes them. You
guys both played fantasy, right? Danny,
he doesn't speak for everyone. I like those hats.
I do.
Danny,
I do.
You have a sizable high elf army, Danny, from fantasy. Did you think 10 years ago that you'd be like, you know, the future of this army? Kangaroos, giant hats.
Yeah, actually I did. I heavily invested in some toy kangaroo models. So I use those for Illyrian Reavers. And here we are.
I see it.
Yep.
I see it.
Fuck you too then, I guess, Danny. So you guys being on hiatus with Stat Center, do you have plans for the year here, or kind of what's your guys' timeline?
Yeah, once the Nopen is done, we don't really have plans so much as we're gonna play it by ear. There's a lot we want to do. We have worked out doing a live show, very much like a sports center. So we would do it on Twitch, with our actual faces for everyone to see, and no scripting any longer, just like flying off the seat of our pants, which we'd already started doing for 5 or 6 episodes anyway. So that'll be a thing. And just kind of getting back to the roots of it. And if there's still no events for too long a time, maybe we'll just kind of co-opt the adjacent show and make it ours, but on a different channel, so we can do it twice a week and just, you know, be us, because it feels good.
Nice. So you mentioned
until we can cover events again.
And speaking of events, you mentioned the Nopen, which would be this year's premiere event. Las Vegas Open, of course, canceled due to COVID. Peter, you put together the LV Nopen, Las Vegas Nopen. Why don't you tell me about that?
Sure. So when Reese finally announced that like the LVO just wasn't going to happen, something I think most people had assumed for a month or two prior, but we just kind of had to wait for the word. If you pull it back like further by a year, last year's LVO, Val and I, Paul Murphy from Forge the Narrative, Adam Camilleri from Art of War Down Under, we had gotten together to make a secondary stream for the LVO, because we felt that GW really doesn't do that amazing of a job of showing off competitive 40K. And we wanted to see if we could do it better. And I think we mostly succeeded. I felt really good about that show. And after that, we were so excited. Like, we were coming up with ideas. We were messaging Reese. We had plans to do the Bay Area Open. We were going to cover SoCal. We were talking to other TOs about doing their events. It was just going to be a thing, the Ocho, as it were. But COVID, of course, got in the way. Like, it got in the way of so many other things, and we kind of stayed quiet. We still kept up with each other. And then when the announcement came out that there was going to be no LVO, Paul Murphy sent out a message to all of us like, hey, do we want to do something about this? What could we do? And I like immediately jumped on it because I don't know if maybe I had been drinking, but like in my mind, I was like, we can do so much. We have so much time. Why don't we do something? And so I started just messaging people that I knew that streamed, because I was like, the most COVID safe thing I can think of is getting the streamers involved. So I messaged Bridger from Tabletop Titans. I talked to John Lennon and Nick Notavati over at Art of War. And I reached out to 10 or 15 people. I know that Val did the same, Paul, just to get a feel for what would people be interested in something if we did it. We had like a resounding yes. So we had a meeting. We kind of nailed together what we wanted to do. Initially, it was going to be just like a stream-a-palooza where we interconnected a bunch of different streamers. They would do whatever they wanted to do, and it would just kind of be like something nice. Val immediately was like, I don't know if people will actually care to watch that because they're just going to watch their own stuff anyway. We need to make it connect. And so we kind of came to this conclusion we would make it an RTT of some kind of tournament. And that's where the Nopen came up. Was we reached out to a bunch of different streamers who are competitive 40K players for the most part, or who just have beautiful, beautiful streams. And we said, would you be interested in playing a tournament where it's your list that goes forward round to round, but not necessarily you? And the response was super overwhelming. Everyone was like, 100%, that sounds like an amazing idea. And it was born. So we made sure that we had people that were in COVID-safe countries, or if they were in a lockdown, they were still allowed to stream for whatever purpose. We made sure we had people in different time zones because we wanted to hit as many countries as possible. So we had like Adam reach out to people in Australia. I reached out to Vanguard Tactics, Hellstorm Wargaming, a couple other people in the UK. And we came up with this plan where we would stream essentially the same hours the LVO would have streamed, but with all of these platformers and all these different platforms instead. And so it was born. And so we had this 16 list, single elimination RTT. It's going to start Friday, January 29th. It's going to run straight through till Sunday, the 31st. And it's going to be about following lists rather than players. And we're doing it for charity. We've added a charity to it because if we're putting all this money into something, we want to make it worth something more. And so there's a charity assigned to it, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which is run by a giant charity called Global Giving. And all of the proceeds that we give to them, and they're giving it to medical professionals to make sure that they get the equipment they need and that they can get to places that are having a hard time getting the help they need for coronavirus. So getting them to remote areas in the world in order to provide their services. So everything we're raising goes to that. We've also created a giant prize pool. Frontline Gaming was remarkably generous. They put together a $1,000 shopping spree through their website as a grand prize that we can give out. 40kstats.com has a kind of a limited budget, so I've gathered about $1,500 worth of prizes in terms of models that we're going to be giving out round to round. And Army Painters come into it and given us like just a crap ton of different paint sets and modeling kits that they're providing as well. And we just want this to be this kind of big charitable event where the community can come together. They can watch their favorite people that they like to watch on stream. They can connect with other people around the world and just enjoy the hobby in a time when we're having a hard time doing that. Because the Las Vegas Open, all these other super majors, Nova, all these ones that were canceled, they're a big deal for us, right? Like I said at the beginning of the show, my favorite thing about this game is the community and being able to hang out with all the players and talk about this game. And we can't do that right now. So this is kind of like our give back to the community. Like, hey, it's not quite the LVO, but it's something. And we're really hoping that people will tune in and watch and have a good time.
Definitely. And if you were listening, you can go to lasvegasnopen.com. .net. Oh my gosh. Net. I'm not going to edit that, but lasvegasopen.net. And there you can find the stream schedule, who's participating, and also how to win those amazing prizes Peter just talked about. It's a real easy thing to do. It's a cool form, which just it makes you do things. So maybe you follow some people on Twitter. Maybe you look at some YouTube channels. All of the ones that are part of this form are really cool guys. And the nice thing about it, when I filled out that form earlier, was they're all people I already follow. So that was super nice to do. But a couple of them, I'd never heard of. So it's really nice to expand the community there. So you were going to say, Peter?
Nope. I just wanted to say, like, I wish we could have included more people. I think that is if we had a disappointment in setting this up, it was we reached out to 20 some odd streamers. All of them said yes. We had probably 20 more that we were going to reach out to, but we just didn't have the time or the resources to make it bigger. If we do this again, that's a priority, because there are so many people who like deserve to be involved in this that we just couldn't. And that's the next step. That's the next step.
Remember, the first thing after LV Nope is Nopva, which is in March.
Nopva. Hey.
Yeah.
You joke. That's probably happening.
Oh, cool.
Just keep it on going.
Yeah.
So then, as we're wrapping up here, Danny, you have some listener questions.
I do.
Yeah, you do. Listeners of this awful podcast in our Discord, we asked them, do you have any questions for Peter the Falcon? And they came through with what I can only assume, because I didn't prepare, are great questions.
Yeah, they're like medium, so we'll go over this.
Good.
Yeah, we have great listeners, though.
Just bad questions.
So yeah, I didn't say that. So the first question, are there any countries or specific metas that really break your stats when you break them down far enough?
Particular countries that break the stats.
Like that make the stats like for that particular area seem like they're wonky comparatively over to the stats overall.
In the past, that was a thing. It's not as bad anymore. Western Australia used to be one where, like, whenever they held an event, it would just be like, I really hope I have like 8 other events this week to counter what they're about to do. Because
weird shit is happening.
They like, the joke used to be like Australia had weird shit, but really it wasn't. Like when I would talk about Thousand Suns and like mixed chaos lists way back in the day, before everyone realized how good they were, like before TJ and Jim made them like household names in 40K, Matt Morrisoli was playing them in Australia and destroying everybody. And then whenever I would talk about the meta, people would be like, well, that's Australia. Like we talked about earlier, like they don't know what they're doing. But it was oftentimes like the joke of the 6 months ahead, like it was these guys. And then there's just like a level of play to it as well. But they kind of aligned eventually to how things worked, with just like Eric Lathuris occasionally trying to screw everything over. But Western Australia, because it's kind of so separated, like in New Zealand, oftentimes they would have an event and it would be like, I ran only armatures and I won. And I'd be like, what? Now I'm going to get 100 messages about armature armies and have to explain, yes, it was a 28-person GT. Like 20 of them were sheep. Like whatever I needed to try to explain the situation.
It doesn't say what species you have to be to play in a Warhammer tournament, to be fair.
Yeah, funny story. This question was by a New Zealand listener.
Sweden always skews it the other way, because one thing I've said before in other podcasts, there's one particular Swedish meta that is super hardcore, and whatever works at the time or whatever is good, like everyone will bring that army.
Right.
So like they'll often really skew things the other way. Like when Gene Stealer cults were good, even though they might have been like 3% of the meta in North America, despite being like a very, very strong army, in Sweden, it was like 40% were Gene Stealer cults. When Raven Guard and Iron Hands were good, and they were already like 30% of the meta, you'd go to a Westeros GT, and it was like 80% were Raven Guard players, and you'd be like, "Oh my god, what is happening?" That's just so they would always skew the other way. Like I used to use that as like one of my gauges for a very brief period, because this Westeros gaming club used to have events like once a month. I'd be like, I can usually tell what's good based off of what 80% of their guys are playing this week.
Right.
So.
That's pretty good. If you could nerf 2 units and buff 2 units over the whole game, which units would you buff or nerf, and how? Man, that's a big question. Heck.
That is a big question. I have to pick 2 to nerf.
Let's just do one. Let's just do 1 buff, 1 nerf.
I would nerf the Apothecary for Space Marines.
Okay.
He's a little bit too strong, given all of the things he does and how cheap he is.
How would you change him if you were going to change him?
God damn it. Don't make me do that too.
200 points.
Yeah, there you go. 500 points.
I mean, like, he gives a feel no pain aura. He gives the warlord trait is an auto take to like just revive a model every turn.
Sure.
I think like I would actually like to see Selfless Healer be an extra CP if you wanted to take it. Unless he was your main warlord. Like, that would have to be it. Like,
oh, that'd be okay. Yeah.
Because Selfless Healer is very strong. He all of the apothecaries probably could go up 5 or 10 points easily. Yeah. And I think people would still take them. As for a model that needs to be buffed, God, like literally anything in the Eldar range could probably be said and it would be legit. The Avatar, it needs a buff. I want that guy to be just fucking incredible. I want him to just like wreck shit.
How would you buff him?
I would just make him this like stupid, unstoppable force. The first thing I would do, his stratagem where he could like for 3 CP, he stands back up. If he dies, I would just make that built in. He had like once per game, he just stands up no matter what. No matter what you do.
I'd like to see him get the Satan treatment. Like, as far as rules go, like that kind of a buff to his rules, I think would be great.
I think he should have some kind of like mortal wound output that's ranged. And I think he should legit just not die the first time you kill him. Like, you have to kill him twice. And then go from there.
Would you guys want to see a return?
Plasma. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, do you want to see a return of the rule where he's immune to flamers and meltas?
Oh, I mean, that would be hilarious, but then somehow the Eldar players would still complain. So,
yeah, I'm surprised you didn't pick Plasma and Scepters.
I would have said Plasma and Scepters a week or two ago, but Death Guard and Mortarion in particular make me think that they're still a fantastic model, and they do probably need a nerf to a small degree again, like another 5 points, but just for Plasma Inceptors, not the base Inceptor, which was a foolish thing that they did in the FAQ. And they probably could go up another 5 points, but I think some of the buffs and nerfs that we haven't seen, I think are part of it is time, because they kind of put this stuff together 6 months ago. But the other thing is, I firmly believe that COVID has messed up the schedule so much that they are not willing to balance things due to like what they expect to change in the game when we see some more codexes. Like, Plasma Inceptors get a little less strong when Death Guard drops. Plasma Inceptors might get even further down the line, like once we see what Dark Eldar and Orcs and some of these other factions have. So I guess that in my mind is where I'm going with why we didn't see stronger nerfs to certain things that were like blatantly too powerful.
Sure. Okay. That's fair. Let's see here. Oh man, that's a question about ELO. We already talked about that.
Listen, I don't care, but I know everybody else cares. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about this. There's a dude working with Goonhammer. I've been helping them a little bit with some of their stat stuff. He has put the Glico 2 treatment, which is a rating system used for chess in some countries, not the Federal Chess Service, but others, and some other games. He's applied Glico ratings to factions, and it's absolutely fascinating. I don't think we're ready yet on a player-by-player level for it, just because of how 40K is currently played. If we get into a place where we have like a legitimate circuit that's worldwide, that's not just the ITC, but it's like GW or something like that, then I think we can look at Glico, we can look at ELO 2, something like that, apply it to players, and have a legitimate chance of it working out. But right now, I don't think it's a thing we should be worried about.
Let's see. Okay, so with the connections that you have, why haven't you made an app for 40K stats?
Oh, it's a good question. It's because I'm stupid.
He likes to play the fool. He answered that earlier.
False. So, as a follow-up, how does it feel to be the Chevy Chase of the 40K community?
You mean like I'm an old shithead now and I'm mildly racist? I guess
nobody wants to work with you anymore.
Nobody wants to work with me anymore. Feels good. I mean, feels good. What can I say?
Finally, some alone time.
Yep. I don't know if that was what they were going for, but that's what I'm going for.
That's what they get.
That's what they get. If you could make a WTC team and pick any players from around the world, who would they be and why? Man, that's 8 people. Let's do 5. If you could pick 5 people to be on like that style of team, who would you pick?
I would pick.
That's a great question. I actually really like that question. That's fun.
Better than my question that I end with. That's cool. That's fine.
From the U.S., I would pick John Lennon and Brandon Grant. I would pick Matt Orsoli from Australia.
Not Eric?
Not Eric. I'd pick Matt.
Okay.
I would pick Carl Abramson from Sweden. So what are we at now? That's 4.
That's 4.
So that gets me a Forces of the Hive Mind player. That gets me a Guard or Sisters player. That gets me a Chaos player. Let's see, and a Space Marines player. I would probably. It's hard because teams come into this, right? But if I'm just going pure skill, I would take. Just trying to think. Probably Rickard Nelson for AdMech, and that would be my 5th. If I had to go deeper, I would look at players like Innes Wilson because of his adaptability in the game. He's actually generally good at multiple factions, has a great understanding of WTC. For coaches, I would look at Adam Abramowitz because he has such a strong attitude and can really bring people together, even if they have disparate attitude, even if they themselves have disparate attitudes. So he'd be something I'd look at from a team captain perspective, if not from a player perspective. Another secondary player I'd bring in just to talk numbers is Christopher Wright from Australia, because the guy is like a genius when it comes to talking to him. I would love to have him and Brandon Grant in a room just talking about 40K. Because I think you would learn so much very quickly. Like there's a couple players from Poland that I think are absolutely stupid good that I would consider as well. Man, there's so many good players out there. But let's go with that just to get it out of the way, because I could think about this for a long time.
Oh
and,
yeah,
and keep throwing out names. Wow, there's so many good players. And I mean, I barely touched the UK, and there's like probably 3 or 4 guys I'd consider from there. So.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. So, let's see here. So what's your airspeed velocity when carrying a coconut?
Oh, it's about 4.
It's red.
Great. Love it.
Let's see here. I have another one here. Oh my God. It's just, they devolve into a bunch of, of course it does. I love our listeners.
It's
just a bunch of Falcon joke. Oh yeah, you're good.
I'll get a drink, and then you can go full fucking to town on ridiculousness. Yeah. I already told you I want to be the penguin that fucks everything. We started off the show on a real good foot for something like this. So.
All right.
Hell yeah.
Man, it's a great interview so far. What a guy. What a champion. His voice is like dying, but still wants to answer questions.
Of course, Peter spent a lot of time this weekend with Hammer Out Cancer. So his voice is probably wonderful from that.
Yeah, absolutely. He was dying on Saturday.
Yeah.
When we streamed a game together. So I totally get it.
Yeah, I've got something in my lungs and it's not good, but it is what it is. I also talk on a radio for a living, so that can cause problems. Anyway, I'm back. I had a drink of water. We'll see how this goes. What do we got?
All right. Let's see here. So I would like to hear some anecdotals from the Falcon.
Anecdotal.
Some anecdotals about the best game of your life, the worst game of your life, and at what moments during game. Oh, we talked about best and worst game. What moments of game during gameplay do you do Falcon sounds? Like, is it during victory? Is it like, is it when you've accomplished an objective?
The screech of defeat.
I will say if I'm playing a game with you and I get extra chatty, it's because I'm beating you real bad and I feel bad about it.
Wait, but I thought our friendship was based on us bonding. It was because you were beating me so badly?
False.
No, you destroyed me in one game and the other game was close. No, but like in general, if I'm playing a game, I banter throughout. Usually I start off with like this is my intent shit, and I try to make everybody comfortable. If I'm losing or if I feel like I've made a big mistake, I'll start talking numbers. Like the probability, the serious part of me kicks in and I'm like looking at probabilities, and you'll just hear me like muttering probabilities in my head. That will just happen. So that's how you know I'm probably in a bad spot, or I'll start repeating myself over and over again. But if I'm beating you, I start getting real jokey because I'm trying to make you feel better. And you may not know that I'm beating you, but that's what's happening. It's just a thing that I do.
So when the joke book comes out, be warned,
Yeah.
You're about to go down.
Well, in my mind, I might be wrong. It's definitely happened in the past. There was a tournament I played in back in 6th edition, I remember. And I spite played Tyranids because a guy in our club said that their codex was so hot garbage that no one should ever play them. By the way, it was bad. And that no one would ever be able to win a game with them. And this was a guy that had bought 100 harpies because he heard on the internet that harpies were going to have essentially objective secured.
You mean gargoyles?
Gargoyles, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry. And they didn't get that rule. So
yeah, no, they sure didn't.
So he like sold all his Tyranids in like a rage and went on all these rants and was super salty in the club, and it was terrible and really uncomfortable. So the next event we had, I played Tyranids, and I'd never played them before. And we played a 4-round RTT. I won my first 3 games. So I went into my 4th game against like Dark Eldar, and I was like, I am going to win this tournament with fucking Tyranids. So I was way too high and mighty with my list, going into an army that basically spammed poison, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good, guys. But I got pretty jokey early because I thought I outplayed him. I made a couple moves, and I was like, oh yeah, here we go. Got jokey, and then at the end, he's like, how many wounds your Hive Tyrant have? And I'm like, oh, it's got 6. He's like, are you sure? And I was like, no. And then I looked, I'm like, no, he's got 5. And he's like, cool. I think probability, I just kill it right now. And then he killed it. And I was like, oh, well, I guess this game is way different than I thought it was going to be. Yeah.
Then he starts to try and make a joke with you, and you're like, the jokes are done. Play the game.
Yeah, jokes are done. And then I like leg swept him and walked out.
Roadhouse. Let's see. We have somebody asking, could Val not make it?
Listen, Val, I love it. I love when people have him on the show. I always say that I'm the secondary guy. Because generally, if I've been put on a show, it's because they asked Val and he said no, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with being the backup.
And then spoilers for the future, we are going to get Val on in a little bit here.
Spoilers, he couldn't make it. And,
he canceled last minute, so we had to call Falcon again.
So yeah, he canceled last minute, so we organized this 2 weeks ago. And set up a Q&A section in our Discord.
All right. The last question I have.
before you get to that, I do want to say something about Val. And he knows this. Literally, my favorite thing about 40kstats.com is that people think Val writes it and does all the stats, and he hates that. So I love it. So I get emails all the time from 40K Stats with like questions about stats, and they're directed at Val, and I'll like forward them to him. I'll be like, well, this one's for you. They want to know. Or he'll be on a podcast and they'll be like, so how did you come up with this stat? And he'll be like, I didn't. He like always tries to defend me, and I think it's really cute because I don't care. But it's like my favorite thing to get emails like, hey, Val, I'm just wondering how to do this. And it's it's very, very common. And I love it. It fills me with a ton of joy because someday I'm going to do something real fucking stupid. And it's going to get pinned on him for sure. And it'll be my out. It'll be my out. I'll delete all my social media and it'll just be all on Val after that.
You can just you forward those messages to Val when you get them. Like, hey, can you answer this question? They really want to know the answer to this. I'm not qualified to do this.
Exactly. This doesn't appear to be my name, so if you can handle it, please.
Yeah.
Well, at least we know the first thing we get
sir.
to ask Val, Danny, is we get to be like, how did you come up with this stat? How did you just? And we'll just the entire thing will be just questions about stats you came up with.
A lot of technical questions.
Yeah. It'd be good times
about database administration.
So we're gonna end.
How did you write this query?
we're gonna end this here with my new favorite question I've asked the last few people here. Of course, one of the biggest tournaments in the world, the Las Vegas Open, is major hub. We get lots of people going into Vegas for there from all around the world. So flying into Vegas, which 3 people do you share a cab with from the airport to the hotel?
Which 3 people do I share a cab with?
Yes.
From the airport to the hotel.
From all of 40K. That's a good 45 minute. That's a good 45 minute cab ride.
Dayton Obrey for sure, because we did it last year. It was super sweet. He lost his cell phone. I felt real bad. We spent most of our first hour at Bally's calling taxi cab companies to try and find out where it went. So definitely him, because I'll probably get another free cell phone out of it. And he's super hot, which is always good when you're in Vegas, is to have someone way hotter than you with you.
Get that pity dance.
Not Danny, because he's really moist. He's so wet all the time. I just wouldn't be able to sit in a cab that long with him.
True. Let's steam up the windows.
You would. I mean, Dayton already does it, but for other reasons. So me and Dayton, I would probably love to be in the cab with not Don Hooson, because he talks too much. I want relative silence for that full 45 minutes, and I need it to be as awkward as possible.
Wait. Your cab ride takes 45 minutes?
That was the time frame I provided, because you got to stop by the liquor store on the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I see. Okay, my bad. Okay,
yeah,
I missed
that. Come on, Danny.
Get with the system.
Get with this. It would have to be someone from Australia that is super uncouth and just likes to swear and talk about how weird the United States is. So probably Adam Camilleri. I think that's a good second in there, just so that we can get his insights into what the fuck is actually happening. And my final person. Have to be someone super thin. Who is the thinnest person in 40K?
That's a really tough category.
I just want someone that's just rake thin. It can't be any of the Biff Pod guys, because they're all fucking Jotuns. So it can't be any of them. Viking giants. Probably Brandon Grant. He's pretty strong, but he's very spindly. His arms are they're very hairy, but they he definitely has old man strength. You look at him and you know he will hurt you if he wants to. But yeah, probably Brandon, and I also get the impression from the times I've spent with him that he wouldn't be a leg spreader. And I think Dayton is, so I want to make sure that I have someone between us. So that's probably my 4.
I love it. So that's me, someone
Dayton
you can
Obrey, Adam Camilleri, Brandon Grant.
Someone you can steal a cell phone from, someone you can laugh at their reaction to how ridiculous America is with you, and someone who could beat you up with their daddy strength.
Yeah, but also small and won't spread his legs too much, because I know Dayton will, and that's going to be a problem. So I need someone to counteract that.
You need to cut down on the man spreading.
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing. Peter.
Plus Brandon exudes respect, so I think Dayton would close his legs for him.
No one closes their legs for Brandon Grant.
Math thing. So there you go.
The Falcon said it. You heard it here, guys. On Mob Rules, Brandon Grant never closes his legs, or nobody ever closes their legs for Brandon Grant.
He's a champion.
Never mind.
I said they
just
would
edit me out. I'm the worst.
I said they would do it because of the massive respect that he just exudes.
Oh, just make so you're saying Brandon Grant closes up people's legs?
Yeah, he walks into a room and you're that is the smartest man here. I need to be respectful.
At least
and
cover my balls.
And your caveman brain kicks in, and you make yourself smaller. right? Like you're like, I can't be threatening around this man. He deserves respect.
Commands the statistically average 4 inches of respect necessary. Peter, as we wrap up, you are on 80 billion things. What do you want to plug?
I mean, we already plugged the Las Vegas Open, which I think is what I hope is going to be a big deal. Please take a look. Get in on the prizes. I just spent a ton of money today on prizes, and I want people to get them that are super cool. So if you think you're cool, get involved. If you don't think you're cool, I probably think you're cool. So don't worry about it. Just get involved. Check out the Gleam. Buy some of our swag so I don't have to pay for the swag. That would be super cool. Listen to the Adjacent Show because it's funny. I might not be funny on it, but Rob and Val carried the weight, so that's okay. And just like spread love, be kind, be good people. That's all.
Yeah. LasVegasNopen.net. Got it right that time. And if you go to prizes, it'll give you the... I did it. I'm a champ. If you go to prizes, it'll give you the link to go to the Gleam. Sign up for some cool podcasts. Sign up for some cool Twitters. Follow some Instagram feeds of just some amazing models of some great people. Everything you do gets you more entries. From the time this podcast posts, you have 1 week to click as many tickets as you can to win some amazing prizes.
Oh, and for people that are curious, if they also want to be the type of penguin that I want to be, it's called the Adélie penguin. So there you go. Also,
Adelaide.
There's an I. Adélie. There's like an accent aigu, and it's ADE accent aigu. LIE. Anyway, they're one of the only animals that have turned to prostitution other than us. So keep an eye. If you're like, man, I need to be an animal someday, if you're in like a lobster situation.
Amazing.
There you go.
Peter the Adélie, thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Do you like cookies but want something more British? Buy biscuits. Not like those you have for gravy. British biscuits. For dunking in your British tea. Stiff upper lip guaranteed. Biscuits, as recommended by Queen Liz of the Britons.
Man, what a great guy.
I know, Gav Thorpe, what a champion. Just the champion of the written word.
Yeah. Dark Angel, like legacy. He has forged so much narrative for that company. But no, seriously, no, just an amazing time. And, I really appreciate all the time I get to spend with this person. So Peter, we were talking about the Falcon or the Penguin.
Oh, yeah. Now he's the Penguin.
Now
he needs to change his nickname.
He's always the Penguin to me now, even though Facebook won't let him be. But just like I said, I want to thank him for coming on, being so open and forthright, and kind of sharing some really cool information, and even some players I hadn't really heard of to definitely check out and kind of look at what they're doing and debunking some of the myths, like the Europe is 6 months ahead. They're not, and apparently they don't even play real 40K.
They're a whole year.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. Is they're so far ahead. They're in 2022. Amazing. Well, we hope you continue to enjoy these formats. I really enjoy, like I said, I think, and we've now talked to Ennis and Colin and Peter, and we're definitely, I think, getting something cool out of them, and hopefully you guys are learning something really awesome. Next time we're going to be back in a couple of weeks, and we'll have an even better guest. I mean, that might not be true or not. I haven't organized anything yet, but we will absolutely have someone. We're going to talk to them for a little bit.
Hey, and let us know if you guys are liking this format. Shoot us an email, send us a Facebook message. If you guys like this format, or if you don't like this format,
absolutely.
Let us know if you like it.
Let us know, because, we're malleable right here. And I think Peter was talking about it earlier. When tournaments stopped and games stopped, because most podcasts are 2 to 4 guys just talking about tournaments and games they played. That was us. So we adapted a little bit with no tournaments or games. But yeah, let us know. Who do you want us to talk to? Do you want us to talk to anyone? Do you want us to have a 40K adjacent style episode where we just talk shit about Frasier? I mean, we'll do pretty much anything here.
We'll do it.
We'll do it, man.
Not scared.
I'm not scared. I'll do a Frasier episode. You know me. Inquisitor Frasier at your service. Also, just as an aside before we go here, if you are a skilled 3D modeler and are able to get me a 3D render of Kelsey Grammer's head that I can scale down to a 40K size, I will pay you money to do that. I have dreams, and this might be awesome, but just instead of a Sisters of Battle, maybe just a Frasers of Battle Army. Just everyone has a Frasier head. Or maybe a Tyranid army where all the Gaunts are just Kelsey Grammer headed.
Oh my God.
I feel that would be
It's
pretty
like the John Cena flying Hive Tyrant all over again.
Except it would be 150 3D printed Kelsey Grammer heads on Gaunts. And after every time you kill one, I'll remove it and say, I'm listening. As is tradition. Danny, what do you want to plug on the way out?
So all of the Hammer Out Cancer streams are archived on the BiffPod or on Canhammer, I believe. So if you want to check them out, they should be up there for I think at least another month.
So they're gonna be up there for 30 days,
there.
And then they're gonna be on YouTube. Yeah. And as soon as they hit YouTube, I will send links out for the games that we were involved in. Obviously, the most important ones of all.
Of course.
Check
Losers Bracket.
Check out our YouTube channel. I mean, that's a good name for a podcast too. Actually, the Losers Bracket.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's our.
That could be the subtitle for Mob Rules.
Our Mob Rules, Jason. But yeah, definitely check out our review of the Death Guard book. It comes out today if you're listening to it live. It is it's a complete change to how the army works, but it's also good. And is a preview of how chaos works and no demons.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, just give it some time. Give it some time.
We'll give it some time. That's the only thing I'm slightly salty about because now I have a very disparate and large Nurgle demon collection that doesn't make sense as a demon's army.
All right, counterpoint to that. Okay. This army works so much better as a mixed army.
Oh my God, it does so much
by itself. I mean, like even though the Contagion Aura is super powerful.
Well, we were already talking.
I think that it's better to have warp time on Mortarion.
Right, and like Innes Wilson, who we interviewed a couple weeks ago, started really pushing for like a little word bearer patrol to really automatically warp time Morty to the front lines turn 1. And you're like, but you lose -1 toughness. I'm like, yeah, you lose -1 toughness, but you get Mortarion in enemy deployment zone on turn 1.
Right,
especially because now his movement is up to 12. So he is speedy boy. And honestly, the flagstone of most of my lists, because I don't think I've sent a list to anyone without him yet. Because
that's true. I've been specifically trying not to put him in my list so that I don't want to crutch myself.
Oh no, I'm gonna crutch myself hard, and then when he gets to FAQ to be 600 points, I'm gonna be just real sad.
Right.
So yeah, check out that video. Enough, check out our streams on Canhammer and other places. BiffPod, that was it. And then follow us on Facebook. Find us on Twitter. Hey John Q or Hey Villicate. Hey John Q or Villicate5. And I guess I don't really have anything else to add, Danny.
I'm good.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, for Mob Rules, I've been John.
What? Okay, cool.
Oh, we can do that again. Danny. For Mob Rules, sorry, I've been John.
I couldn't hear you cut out. I've been Danny. See you next time.